Dear students, welcome back. We'll discuss now today various types of tragedies, right? So this is in continuation with the literary forms which we started. So tragedy can be divided into different types, right? We discussed the forms are the forms of drama, tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy, melodrama, and domestic play. Right now, we are discussing what are different types of tragedies. According to the matter and its form. Matter means what theme it concerned and how it was written. That is form. So, based on this, we can divide tragedy into five types. First is the medieval tragedy. Second is the Senecan or revenge tragedy. Then comes the domestic tragedy, then classical tragedy, and romantic tragedy. So these are various types of tragedy, and for a student of literature, uh, it is very important to understand the difference between these different types of tragedies. So let's first look at medieval tragedy. The name itself suggests that the tragedy which was written or which was in fashion during the Middle Ages. Middle Ages means the 13th to 14th century, and the dramatists during this age, they were quite unaware of the conventions of the Greek tragedy or Aristotle's poetics because of basically no external contact of British drama, or drama in proper form had not started as yet. But yes, there was some kind of writings which you may call as drama and tragedy also. So here in this medieval tragedy, the hero is obviously a man of high status who suffers deservedly or undeservedly, and he has a tragic fall. And the story, in tragedy, as is common, that it moves from prosperity to adversity, and obviously the tragedies of this period were influenced by miracle and morality plays. So basically they were religion based. So an example you can quote is Chaucer's The Monk's Tale. Though it is not a drama proper, as I told you, it is a kind of narrative story, but Geoffrey Chaucer had all the elements of drama in his poetry. So that is why Chaucer's The Monk's Tale can be quoted as an example of this kind of tragedy, that is the medieval tragedy. So The Monk's Tale and various medieval plays, which were basically morality plays. Okay. Then next is the Senecan and or revenge tragedy, and very important form of tragedy, because most of the Elizabethan dramatists, including Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and other university wits also, they used this kind of tragedy in their plays, and it was influenced by Seneca. Seneca, who was a playwright, and Senecan tragedy basically was meant to be recited and not staged, and it had a very complex plot and a formal style of dialogue, and English writers also followed this model. They adhered to the use of three unities and the chorus, and they divided their plays into five acts, as we have already discussed. Then this Senecan tragedy, or the revenge tragedy, as the name itself suggests, is based on the theme of murder, conspiracy, murder, blood, revenge, and revenge was taken by men alive, or if not by alive men and women, then by their ghosts, right? So it is full of such scenes of murder, revenge, ghost, mutilation, and carnage. and there are supernatural elements in such kind of tragedy. Okay, Elizabethan writers, as I told you, they used this Senecan tragedy as a model for their drama, and they used it, this revenge and horror, the theme of revenge and horror, uh, as it was suited to the taste of the audience of that time. So the first, English tragedy which was written on Senecan model was Thomas Kyd's The Spanish Tragedy in 1586, which has a murder and a quest for revenge, and it uses ghost, insanity, suicide, play within a play, a bloody end to provide thrill and sensation. So all these elements you will find in Elizabethan dramatists, including William Shakespeare. Play within a play, there is insanity, or there are supernatural elements, right? And so that's why this kind of tragedy had a great influence on the Elizabethan dramatists. And action which could not be shown was reported by messengers. So this is the Senecan or the revenge tragedy. Here is Seneca, and this is one example, the Spanish tragedy by Thomas Kyd. Okay. Then comes the domestic tragedy, as the name itself suggests, related to domestic issues or domestic themes, right? So this began in 18th century, and its hero was domestic, means a common man, mainly from middle or low social ranks, and its subject was common domestic issue, problems, emotional or other kind of problems or issues faced by the man in his family or the family environment. So the best example is Henrik Ibsen's tragedy like A Doll's House, okay, and Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which is written in prose, and all they highlight the problems and aspirations of common man. For example, Death of a Salesman is the story of a man who is a failure in his life and is not able to realize his dreams. Okay, so the American dream which he had could not be realized, and finally he commits suicide. So this is domestic tragedy. So these are examples. Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House, which is the story of a woman who finds herself captivated in not literally, but actually she finds herself always in kind of confinement, right? Then Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. Then classical tragedy. So in England, many playwrights, they imitated the models of the Greek tragedy. So the Greek tragedy is basically the classical tragedy, and the models were set by great Greek dramatist Sophocles. So classical tragedy is basically the tragedy of the Greek, and it is known for its strict adherence to the three unities. The three unities which we talked about earlier too. The unity of time, unity of action, and unity of place. So unity of action means one single action which is complete, which means it has a beginning, middle, and end, and it is logically connected, right? Then there should be nothing extra or superfluous in it, and there is no subplot, because the action moves in a single direction. Okay, so it does not favor any kind of subplot, and also the mixing of the tragic and comic elements, that is tragic comedies. So here the action is clear, directed in a single single direction, and it is complete, logically connected, and there is nothing extra or superfluous. The next is unity of time. Unity of time means the action is limited in time, That means it is not spread across some days or months or years. Rather, it is limited to 2 or 3 hours or the most a single day. As Aristotle also postulated in his Poetics, that the action of a tragedy should be limited a single revolution of the sun, uh, not the sun but the earth around the sun, right? That means 24 hours a day maximum. Okay, so this is unity of time, and these the people or the dramatists who followed these three unities, which were basically the unities of action, time, and place. So this is example Sophocles and the Greek tragedy. Unity of place means that the action represented should be limited to a single location, so that there is no frequent change of stage or place. There is no shift. There is no frequent or regular shift from one place to another. So so playwrights who adhered to these three unities, uh, because they believed that in order to give the audience an illusion of reality, or to provide them a realistic experience while watching the play, it was important to adhere to these three unities: unity of time, action, and place. Then another element of classical tragedy was chorus. It is also a very important feature, and the chorus consisted of a group of actors who sang or who made comments from time to time during the action of the play and about its moral. So basically it was supposed to guide the audience, right? So these are the elements of classical tragedy. And last comes the romantic tragedy. The name of romantic tragedy is associated with William Shakespeare, the greatest Elizabethan dramatist. And though he does not stick to the three rules of classical tragedy, that is the unity of place, action, and time, because his action is not limited to one place, or it is also not limited in time. So he ignores the unities of time and place in his play, right? And as far as the unity of action is concerned, Shakespeare and many English dramatists, they have introduced many subplots in their plays, and Shakespeare combines tragedy and comedy, and he has produced tragicomedies. So in a way, you can say that Shakespeare does not, strictly adhere to the classical rules of tragedy or rules of the classical tragedy, right? Because his action is not limited in time or in place, and also there is no unity of action, because his plays, almost every play has multiple subplots. That means the action is not single, or which moves in the single direction. There is not just a single plot. There are subplots. Okay, so which was not favored by Aristotle or the Greek classics, right? Then these are examples of Shakespeare's plays: Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Julius Caesar, King Lear. So in King Lear, for example, there is a subplot in which there is story of Gloucester, which forms the subplot. And this subplot is very intricately or skillfully woven into the main structure of the story. And it in fact complements or it supplements the main action. Okay. So we can say that romantic or Shakespearean tragedy differs from the classical tragedy in the way that it does not strictly adhere to the rules of classical tragedy, that is the unity of time, place, and action. However, in some respects, in some aspects, it resembles, because you will find that the hero in Shakespearean tragedy also belongs to a higher status, is a man of higher status in the society or in life, and his great fall results in a kind of disaster or calamity for many, maybe in some cases the entire human race or the whole country. So, in this manner, uh, the Shakespearean tragedy or the romantic tragedy resembles the classical tragedy, right? So, thank you very much. Hope you are enjoying this series, and it is very important for every student